We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 12, Text 24. Dhruva Maharaj quotes back to Godhead. Tasya kila jagat dhatu avam devasya Saringina Parsada Iha Samprapto Netum Tvam Bhagavat Padam Tasya Kila Jagat Dhatu Tasya Kila Jagat Dhatu Avam Devasya Saringina Avam Devasya Saringina Parsada Iha Samprapto Netum Tvam Bhagavat Padam Tasya Kila Jagat Dhatu Avam jagadatu
Avam Devasya Sharangina
avam devasya shakina
Asata Gita Samprato
prasada viha samprapto
Netum Tvam Bhagavad Bhagam
etum tvam bhagavad padam tasya khila jagadatu avam devasya shringina arshada viha samprapto etum tvam bhagavad padam
Tasya kila jagadatu
tasya khila jagadatu
avam devasya sharigina
avam devasya shringina
arshada iha samprapta
arshada viha samprapto
etum tvam bhagavad padam
etum tvam bhagavad padam tasya akhila entire jagat
universe
dhatu
creator
avam we devasya of the Supreme Personality of God Sharingina who has the bow named Sharinga
who has the bow named Sharinga
Parasado associates Iha now Samprapto approach Netum to take Tvam you Bhagavad Padam to the position of the Supreme Personality of God.
To the position of the Supreme Personality of God.
Translation. We are the representatives of the Supreme Personality of God, the creator of the whole universe, who carries in his hand the bow named Sharinga. We have been specifically deputed to take you to the spiritual world. Can repeat. We are the representatives
We are the representatives
of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the creator of the whole universe,
the creator of the whole universe,
who carries in his hand the bow named Sharinga.
the bow named Sharinga.
We have been specifically deputed
We have been specifically deputed
to take you
to take you
to the spiritual world.
to the spiritual world.
In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that simply by knowing his transcendental pastimes, whether within this material world or in the spiritual world, anyone who understands factually who he is, how he appears, and how he acts, can be immediately fit for transfer to the spiritual world. This principle, stated in the Bhagavad Gita, operated in the case of King Dhruva. Throughout his life, he tried to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by austerity and penances. Now, the mature result was that Dhruva Maharaj became fit to be carried to the spiritual world, accompanied by the confidential associates of the Lord. Tasya kila jagadatur avam devasya sharengina Parshada iha samprato netum tvam bhagavad padam. We are the representatives of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the creator of the whole universe, who carries in his hand the bow named Sharinga. We have been specifically deputed to take you to the spiritual world. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Hare Krishna. Okay. Anyone here for the first time? No? Okay, great. So we're in the story of Dhruva, which we've been following for quite some months now. And we're at the point where, at the climax, Dhruva, the 5-year-old boy, left was the prince, but his father had more than one wife, which was common in that time. And Dhruva's mother was not his favorite wife, so the king favored more his other son from his younger wife. And therefore Dhruva felt very spurned by his father, who wasn't given a place on his father's land, and being very angry, at this disrespect. He left the palace at 5 years old and wandered into the forest in search of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he wanted from him a palace, a bigger palace than his father, a bigger palace than his grandfather. Because he was, as a warrior, his ego was hurt, and he needed to prove to the world that he meant something. So he approaches Krishna for this. He approaches Narada, which is his spiritual master, and who guides him in the process of bhakti, which is the process of pure devotional service, with some elements of the stanga that Narada has in. So that Dhruva, while performing bhakti, that his heart will become purified, and the desire to just want something that was so temporary will be removed from his heart. So after practicing all these penances, Dhruva then gets the darshan, gets to see the Supreme Personality of God, Lord Vishnu, face to face. And then he thinks, what was I asking for? A palace, really? That's what I wanted. And having gone through that experience, Dhruva then doesn't want these things. But Krishna gives him those things to now take care of on his behalf. So he rules as a king, he rules the palace, he does all these things, but now on duty to the Supreme Lord. And many other things happen, his brother dies, he takes revenge on his brother, and he has moments where he's bewildered by anger. But in these moments, all the kind guardians in his life, they rise up, and they remind him, Dhruva, this is not what you're meant for. This behavior is not becoming of you. There's something more important in your life. And he's able to heed their guidance. And therefore he continues in his life, and at the right moment, when his dependents and his children are able to run the palace, he leaves the kingdom. He leaves. He enters into Bhadrakashram, the Himalayas, meditating on the Supreme Lord. And now comes the point where Vishnu, Krishna, has sent the carriers, the swan-like carriers, to the material world to fetch Dhruva and take him back to the spiritual world. And that's how we come across today's verses, because the swan carriers don't come alone. They come with Nanda and Sunanda, who are deputed representatives of the Supreme Lord. And they're coming now to fetch Dhruva on the swan carrier, just bringing everybody quickly up to speed of where we are. And so we reach this verse. We are the representatives of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the creator of the whole universe, who carries in his hand the bow named Sharinga. We have been specifically deputed to take you to the spiritual world. Would I like this position? That's a very good position. Specifically deputed to take you to the spiritual world. When I read it, I kind of hear, because of my crazy mind, I kind of hear the background, like, when you see these sort of detective series, you get the guy coming like, we're here from the department of such and such, we want to now, arrest you, take you away. You have this kind of tone happening here. But because they are representatives, if people come from the police force, they are representatives of the government, and they have a right to say, here I am representing the South African government, and therefore I have permission to do such and such. But here they are, the representatives. Can you imagine saying, here we are, the representatives of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And just in case you didn't know who, like the South African government was, they would say such and such president, And here, just in case you didn't know who the Supreme Personality of Godhead was, nonetheless saying, that person who created the whole universe, like the whole universe, you get it. So, therefore, he's here. That person who carried in his hand the bow named Sharanga. For this person, we are specifically deputed to take you to the spiritual world. So, it's quite a moment for Dhruva. It's really a moment that all his devotional service through his entire existence has now fructified. It's bearing fruit. And that's one point. That everything that we do every day, that you get up, you put your hand in the bean bag, that you do your service, that you come to the temple, that you see the deities, all these acts of devotion, we may not see the results immediately. Sometimes we may, and sometimes we won't. Because there are seeds, they're seeds, and the results will come when we most need it. As you can see with the case of Dhruva. The first thing that caught me about this verse was the bow of Sharanga. Because it's like, I haven't heard so much about it before, but it actually comes up a lot in Krishna's Leela. That Krishna often takes the bow of Sharanga, and with this bow, he is able, he's killing so many things. In the killing of Bhagavatam, in different pastimes, many other places, Krishna kills the demons with his Sharanga bow. So I was looking really into that, Krishna's Sharanga bow. And there was something that I wanted to read to you. Oh, yes. Just getting it. In the 12th canto, the Sharanga bow is mentioned quite a bit, actually. Well, in a description of Krishna. This is in this section of the 12th canto, chapter 11, text 14 to 15, but also that entire section. It's a section where it is describing Krishna as he would appear in the universe. I can give you an example of what. I mean. This is a representation of the Supreme Lord as the universal person, in which the earth is his feet, the sky his navel, the sun his eyes, the wind his nostrils. The demigod of procreation his genitals, death his anus, the moon his mind. The heavenly planets are his head, the direction his ears, and the demigods protecting various planets his many arms. The god of death is his eyebrows. Shame is lower lip, greed is upper lip, delusion is his smile, and moonshine his teeth, while trees are the almighty Purusha's bodily hairs, and the clouds the hair on his head. So this is describing how we can remember Krishna when seeing the whole world around us. We see the eyes, we remember remember this is Krishna's eyes. We see the clouds, remember this is Krishna's hair. We see the trees, we know that it's the hair of his body. So that's how we can walk through the material world, still recognizing Krishna. And here it also describes in these texts the different auspicious articles that Vishnu holds in his hand and how they relate to the universe. That's what I wanted to read. The club the Lord carries is the chief element in prana, incorporating the potencies of sensory, mental, and physical strength. So Krishna's club represents the energy. His excellent conch shell is the element water, and his sword, pure as the sky, the element ether. His shield embodies the mode of ignorance, and his bow, named Sharinga, time. His arrow for the quiver, the working sensory organs. So in the scheme of the universe, Krishna's bow, the Sharinga, represents time. And here it is Dhruva, or the Sananda, describing Vishnu Dhruva as a carrier of the Sharinga bow. And it's appropriate because this is now Dhruva's time. It is now Dhruva's time to reap the benefits of his devotional service. But it also comes up before in Dhruva in chapter 10. When the sages appear, when Dhruva is bewildered under the clouds of the Yakshas, the sages appear. They tell Dhruva, may the Supreme Personality of Godhead, known as Sharinga Devi, who relieves the distresses of his devotees, kill all your threatening enemies. So it's interesting that the sages remind Dhruva of the Lord by using this name, Sharangadanva, which is he who carries the Sharanga bow. And again, when the deputed representatives come, they remind Dhruva that we're coming from the person who's holding the Sharanga. So often this word comes up, and this analogy comes up, that Krishna is there with his bow killing the enemies. And that's an interesting thing, is that Krishna is killing the enemies, not Dhruva. And last night I was listening to a lecture by Anaswami on this verse, and he was mentioning that is an important point, because in our process of Krishna consciousness, in the path of devotion, there's so many obstacles and so many things that we need to progress through, so many beams that are uprooted from the heart. And in that process, we think that we are the ones doing the cleaning. Vibhuti was mentioning last night that sometimes in the winter in Vrindavan, in India, it means that after many months, these big blankets now are being, what do we call it? South African Indian language, gudris. Members of gudris are. They come out and they're used to create warmth. But because they've been away for so long, the continent inside of them isn't fluffed up properly. So there's this word called vidunoti, which describes this analogy of how there's a man that walks through a village with a specific bow instrument, and the way he twangs it, the vibration that comes off that bow, when he twangs it, just fluffs up the blankets. You're just able to fluff up the blankets just based on the resonance of that twang. And the analogy is given that similarly, the heart is like those compressed rings. It's caked with layers of impressions of all our past activities. But when the vidunoti sounds, you can just imagine how it starts becoming loosened, and suddenly there's more air and there's more, it's all fluffed up by the sound of that vidunoti. And that exactly is what it's compared to. It's the sound of the holy name. And the sound of the holy name is similarly uncaking the heart of all the negative things that is lying in there. But it's not that we ourselves, the holy name, Chitradharma, that we ourselves are going in, and cleaning the blackened heart with domestos and bearing upon him the Srimad bowl, because he kills the enemies. And similarly, therefore, we ourselves, it's not really up to us, really, to try and clean the heart. We have to be willing instruments. We have to be willing to look. One time, I asked Bridget a question, like, what do you do when, suddenly it seems like in the process of devotion, there's more dirt in the heart than there was before. And you think like, okay, I'm trying to practice as a devotee, I should be a better person, but it feels like I was worse than I was before. And Bridget said that the first thing that happens when you enter a dark and dirty room is that the light has to come on. And when the light is on, you see the dirt. And in the darkness, you could think that, oh, this is just a room. It could be a clean room, it could be a dirty room, I don't know, because it's up. But what happens when you take to the process of devotion, the light switches on and then you see it. You see all the negative things that are residing in the heart. And then you become willing. Okay, Krishna, please allow for this cleansing process. Willing means I lift my hand to my beanbag and I start chanting holy names. I do my heart of it. But it's Krishna himself who is holding the Srimad bowl and killing the enemies. Not us. And so therefore, the Dhammakaya Maharaj is making the point that we see in Dhruva's life, he's at this point where he's reaping the benefits of his devotional service. But it's not like everything was perfect. It's not like he did everything perfectly. There were moments when he made mistakes, moments when he gave in to anger, moments when he was not acting on the absolute devotional platform. But the difference was that in those moments, Dhruva took shelter. Dhruva was able to take the shelter of the Supreme Personality of God. That when the sages came and said, Dhruva, stop, Dhruva didn't say, no, what do you know? I'm doing it my way. When Swayambhuva came and said, Kuvera is not going to be happy, stop Dhruva. Dhruva didn't say old man, what do you know? Dhruva didn't think that I rely on my own strength and my intelligence and I'll figure it out on my own, just leave me. Dhruva heard the elders. He immediately corrected himself. And that was what it means. That's what it means to take shelter. Not that we never make a mistake, but that when we do, we're able to rise to the occasion, introspect, acknowledge it, and correct it. Introspect, acknowledge, and correct. And that's simply that because he took shelter again and again and again. That's why he can be here at Vajrayashram in the Himalayas and have his swan ride back to the spiritual world. Because he took shelter. And so therefore this is a big theme in Dhruva Lila and a big theme in our lives at every moment of every day. Where do we go when our back is against the wall and things get tight? Your mind is driving you crazy and you're ready to I saw this Instagram reel. It says, this is your reminder to be nice today because you're not going to have a prison life if you kill somebody. You're not cut out for prison, so be nice today. So maybe this is like our reminder that sometimes you push the place, you're like, this person, you want them to stand up against fire and so on. But for the moment. But the truth is that it's not that the impetus won't arise. It's what we do when it arises and where we go to for shelter. Yeah, I'm really talking to myself. It's the question we can all ask ourselves. Where do I go for shelter? When I need a space, a safe space, a sacred space, where do I go for shelter? And if I'm not going to Krishna, in some form or the other, if I'm going to something else, then we know that how long is that shelter going to last? How can we be sheltered from the universal storms of destruction, which is an umbrella? Because that's what material shelter is affording us, an umbrella. But a tornado is raging. It's not going to help. It's not going to give us ultimate shelter. So on a practical level, where do I go to for shelter? And we should have a list of 5 things I do when I reach that point. 5 ways that I have options to practically take shelter. Because it's not just sweet words coming out of the Bhagavatam. We got to translate it to our lives. We got to say, what are my options? Okay, call a friend. That's how I take shelter. Okay, put on some kirtan and dance all that negative energy out. That's some shelter. Okay, I just maybe be substitute, like withdraw and stay with the Bhagavatam. That's my shelter. Whichever way it works, because it will be different for every devotee, because we have different natures and different inclinations. But we need to have a means, a place where we can go to shelter. So that when we want to kill all the yakshas in our lives, that there's going to be guides there who are willing and able to say, I can give you direction. That's another thing. Sometimes we find in devotional practice that tendency sometimes happens where we isolate ourselves from higher guidance. When someone's not willing to take advice, it's one thing that advice should be given in a way that a person can accept, but also when there's relationship, Otherwise it becomes something like, you did this wrong today, you did that wrong yesterday, you did 5 things wrong the day before, But when advice is given in a loving way from a person that has a relationship with, then it's easier to accept. It's easier to accept. So, therefore, we need guides in our lives who, when they raise their head and say, okay, I love you, but you're being an idiot now, we can listen. We're able to listen to these people. And it may not be everyone, but it has to be someone or some people that we can go to in moments of shelter, that we need shelter. So, in this verse, Srila Prabhupada is speaking about Janma Karma Devi from the Bhagavad Gita, or how knowing Krishna and knowing Krishna's leader, Krishna's transcendental process, this is our ticket out of the material world. Now, I always felt when we read that it felt like too simple in one way or too complicated in another way. Because let me just go to the first one. So I want to read the forward also. Janma karma chumedevyam evam yovedikam fataha Chatvareham punar janma naitimam yatisuarjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in the material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So one who knows the nature of my appearance and activities. Within the purport and within some lectures that Srila Prabhupada gave in this verse, he kind of says, to know Krishna means to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, beyond the demigods, beyond the Vishnu and Rama incarnations, Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that's what it means to know Him. So if we accept Krishna as God, then we know Him. Then we should all go back to the spiritual world, right? So that's one level of knowing. The other level of knowing Krishna is that you know Him, in the sense that do you really, the pastime of Krishna manifests in your heart, that you know Him, and in that way you feel like, oh God, I'll never know Krishna. So this verse is a promise, that upon leaving this body, you will never never take birth again in this material world, but attain my abode. So the promise is high. But the close to fulfill the promise is very wide. You know, we can know Krishna, I know Krishna, yes, right. Okay, we know Krishna. And then there's knowing Krishna. And which knowing gets us to the spiritual world. And then there's the fact that Krishna is unknowable. That he's infinite and you can, Radharani is still every day appreciating newer and newer qualities of Krishna infinitely and eternally. So we can't know him. So okay, there's a promise in the verse, but what does knowing Krishna mean? You know, what does it mean? When do we know if we know Krishna enough to get the reward that's in this verse? I don't know, I'm just kind of asking questions, I'm not exactly sure of the answer. But I guess one thing you can know is that knowing Krishna, or being inquisitive to know about Krishna, is in itself something that gets us closer to the Lord. Like when we hear that Krishna has the bow Sharanga, we want to know something about this bow. Or we want to know something about Krishna's Janma and Karma, his birth and activities. We're approaching Janmashtami, right, which is the appearance of Krishna. So the more we learn about Krishna, the more we learn about his activities, and the more that we learn about his appearance, but also the more that we learn about his qualities. So it's not just about knowledge, information, right? Krishna's this color, he has this sort of hair, he lives here, this is his mother, this is his father, this is the place that he done, these are the pastimes that he did. I know all 19 chapters by title, so if I was in an interview, I'd be able to say, okay, this is who Krishna is, I can do it. Like, you know, if Nandan's Nandan come to interview you. But the point is that knowing Krishna means that by knowing him, the heart is changing. It's not just the facts that are changed, that we need. It's that by the knowledge by the process of knowing him, the heart is changing. It means that by knowing Krishna, we step by step fall in love with him. That's what's meant to happen. That's why we can receive the benediction at the end. Because by knowing him, we become enchanted by him. Something Kadamkana Swami says is that sometimes you should chant such that we become enchanted by Krishna. Enchanted by him. And so therefore the process of knowing him is endless and limitless. But the more that we make the attempt to know him, beyond just the details, but who he truly is as a person, that the more we are enchanted, and the more this, upon leaving this material world, we will not want to come back again, because when we know Krishna, we wouldn't want to come back again. Now we ask people, like, oh, you know, okay, if Nanda is to Nanda park their swan carrier right now, okay, who's willing to go? Who's ready to go? You know, who's ready to talk about? You know, some of us, many of us, we say, yeah, sure, let's check it out, you know. But if we want to check it out simply for the curiosity, then we will be given entrance. If we want to check it out simply because this material world is too much, it's not entrance requirement enough. You know, it doesn't fulfill the entrance requirement. It's that knowing Krishna is meant for us to develop love. But now love is a high thing. Like, you know, it's a high thing. And it's difficult to just say on a true, unalloyed level that love is there. But if you take it down a few hundred notches, then there's gratitude. You know, and by knowing Krishna, we can become grateful. Grateful for his place in his life, his hand in our lives, his activities, his nature, you know, the type of heart that he has, you know, and just simply harnessing that gratitude will give us the seeds of what can fructify into love. And that top of victory trees and the ground is made of jewels that shine like millions of suns. Not enough. Like deep gratitude for who Krishna is and his place in his life. Gratitude for the mercy that we're given. That can start getting us there. So, I just want to check this. Maybe something in the jungle karma proverb that I wanted to read. There is no alternative means that anyone who does not understand Lord Krishna as a Supreme Personality of Godhead is surely in the mode of ignorance, and consequently he will not attain salvation, simply, so to speak, by licking the outer surface of the bottle of honey, or by interpreting the Bhagavad Gita according to mundane scholarship. Such empiric philosophers may assume very important roles in the material world, but they are not necessarily eligible for liberation. Such puffed up mundane scholars have to wait to the causeless mercy of the devotee of the Lord. One should therefore cultivate Krishna consciousness with faith and knowledge, and in this way attain perfection. So the point that Srila Prabhupada is making in this purport, it's but that trying to understand the Bhagavad Gita through mundane scholarship and licking the outside of the jar of honey, thinking you'll taste the sweetness, whereas we don't have access to it because we're simply trying to figure things out with our mind rather than transforming the heart. Parthasarasa Maharaj spoke about the affair of the heart. It's a good title to remember every day because that's what bhakti is meant to be, an affair of the heart. But because the heart can be ruled by so many mundane things, it's also an affair of the mind because we have to fill it in with this transcendental knowledge so that the heart can change, so that the holy name can shake up the caked blackness that's there, and that will be willing to transform and take shelter when we are meant to. At all times. Okay, I'm going to stop here, and if there's any thoughts or questions, comments, we can take it.